Billionaire shocked to see unknown girl eating leftovers until he discovers who she is. The private elevator on the top floor emitted a soft sound as it opened, revealing the silent environment of the executive office. Michael Harrison Bennett adjusted his dark blue tie while walking through the hallways he knew by heart, but something was different that Tuesday. An almost imperceptible noise was coming from the direction of the private kitchen attached to his meeting room. The meeting with the Japanese investors had ended earlier than expected. Michael decided to personally check if the cleaning team had organized everything correctly before heading out for another lonely night in his apartment in the Upper East Side neighborhood of New York City. At 42 years old, the richest man in the United States had a mathematically precise routine where every minute was calculated to maximize profits and business opportunities. The sound repeated, this time clearer. Someone was moving utensils in the kitchen. Michael checked the watch on his wrist. It was almost 8 in the evening, the time when all employees should have already left. His expression hardened as he walked silently toward the location, mentally preparing to confront a possible intruder. The scene he encountered left him completely paralyzed. A girl of approximately 8 years old, wearing an impeccable school uniform, a white shirt with a small collar and a navy blue skirt, was sitting on the marble floor of the kitchen. She was holding a white plate with a few leftover pieces of sushi served during the meeting, eating with a delicacy that totally contrasted with the unusual situation. "What are you doing here?" Michael's voice came out harsher than he intended, making the child look up without showing any sign of fright or guilt. The girl observed him with deep brown eyes, as if assessing whether he deserved an answer. Her light brown hair was tied in 2 simple braids, and there was a disturbing serenity in her behavior. She calmly chewed the last piece of sushi before answering. "I was hungry. You always leave so much food left over after these meetings." Her voice was soft, but carried a strange maturity for her apparent age. Michael felt a mixture of irritation and confusion taking over his emotions. How had a child managed to get through all the security systems of the most protected building in New York City? And why did she speak as if she knew his routine? "How did you get in here? This floor is restricted access." He kept his distance, observing every movement of the girl while trying to process the absurd situation. The girl carefully placed the plate on the floor beside her and crossed her legs, maintaining an upright posture that demonstrated refined upbringing. "I know you always stay late on Wednesdays. Today is Tuesday, so I thought it would be safe." The answer sent a chill down Michael's spine. How did she know specific details about his schedule? Only people very close to the company knew his private hours. His eyes scanned the environment looking for signs of how she could have entered, but everything seemed normal. "Answer my question. How did you get in?" His voice became firmer, taking on the authoritative tone he used in the most tense negotiations. The girl sighed as if dealing with an obvious question. "The same door you always use. I waited for you to leave for the meeting and came up." She vaguely pointed in the direction of the hallway. "It's not the first time." Michael felt his blood run cold. The implication that a child had observed his movements and violated the security of his office multiple times was disturbing on several levels. He pulled his cell phone from his pocket, preparing to call security. "It's no use calling them. The cameras always stop working when I come here." The girl spoke with a naturalness that made Michael stop in his tracks. "It's as if the system knows I belong to this place." The observation was so disconcerting that Michael stood motionless for several seconds. He decided to test the truth of the girl's words, quickly typing a message to the head of security. The response came in less than a minute. All cameras on the executive floor had experienced technical failures between 7:15 and 8 in the evening, exactly the period that would coincide with the child's presence. "What's your name?" Michael put away his phone, realizing he needed a different approach to understand the situation. "Emily," she answered without hesitation, but something in her eyes suggested there was more story behind that simple name. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. "Emily what? Where do your parents live?" Michael took a few steps closer, noticing details that had escaped his first observation. The girl's uniform was clean and well kept, but her nails showed signs of someone without regular access to basic care. Her black shoes, though polished, had worn soles that indicated much time walking. "Just Emily, my parents—" She paused, as if carefully choosing her words. "Are no longer with me. But you already know that, don't you, Daddy?" The word hit Michael like a punch to the stomach. He instinctively stepped back, feeling his legs tremble. "What did you say?" Emily gracefully rose from the floor, smoothing her skirt with delicate gestures that reminded him of familiar movements, though Michael couldn't identify exactly why. "I said Daddy. That's how daughters call their fathers, isn't it?" Michael's world began to spin. He leaned on the kitchen marble countertop, trying to maintain composure as painful memories resurfaced. 15 years ago, he had lost his wife, Elizabeth, to complications during childbirth. The doctors told him that neither she nor the baby had survived. He never questioned the details, burying himself in work to escape the devastating pain. "That's impossible. My daughter, she didn't survive childbirth." His voice came out as a hoarse whisper, laden with a pain he thought he had long buried. Emily approached him, her eyes showing an understanding that seemed impossible for an 8-year-old child. "Sometimes things aren't as they tell us, Daddy. Sometimes the truth stays hidden to protect us from pain." Michael observed the girl's face with an attention bordering on desperation, searching for any resemblance to Elizabeth or himself. The brown eyes were identical to his wife's, and there was something about the jawline that mirrored his own features. But this could just be his desperate mind creating connections where none existed. "Prove you're my daughter." His voice regained some firmness, taking on the tone of someone used to verifying facts before making decisions. Emily walked to the panoramic window that offered a spectacular view of New York City at night. The building lights created a hypnotic pattern stretching to the horizon, but she didn't seem impressed by the landscape. "You have a small scar behind your left ear from a bicycle fall when you were 12. She spoke without turning around. "You put 3 spoons of sugar in your coffee, but only when you're nervous. When you're calm, you drink it black." Michael instinctively touched his left ear, where there really was a small mark that few people knew about. The observation about the coffee disturbed him even more. It was such a personal habit that not even his secretary had noticed. Anyone who works here could know these things. He tried to maintain rationality, but his voice betrayed growing anxiety. Emily turned slowly, and for the first time since the conversation began, her eyes showed profound sadness. "You screamed the name Elizabeth during nightmares. I heard you a few times when I stayed in the building across the street, watching your window." The comment about Elizabeth struck Michael like an icy blade. He did indeed often wake in the middle of the night, screaming his wife's name. But this happened in the privacy of his apartment, far from any witnesses. How could a street child have access to such intimate information? "Where do you live? With whom?" He changed strategies, trying to understand the girl's practical situation before processing the emotional implications. "I manage on my own. There are places in the city where a clever girl can spend the night undisturbed." Emily sat back down on the floor, this time leaning against the cabinet. "But I always come back here. This place calls to me." Michael observed the girl's relaxed posture and realized she behaved as if she were at home. There was a naturalness in her movements within the kitchen that suggested familiarity, as if she truly belonged there. "How long have you been watching me?" The question came out more vulnerable than he intended. "For as long as I can remember existing." Emily picked up a small school backpack that Michael hadn't noticed before, resting at the foot of the cabinet. From it, she withdrew a notebook with yellowed, crumpled pages. "Want to see?" Michael approached cautiously as she opened the notebook. The pages contained dozens of drawings made with ordinary pencils, all depicting the same figure, a man in a suit in different situations. There were drawings of him walking through the office, talking on the phone, looking out the window, and even some that seemed to depict moments of sadness, with the man hanging his head. "My God," Michael murmured, perfectly recognizing his own figure in every stroke. The drawing showed a detailed observation that went beyond casualness. There were years of visual notes there, as if the girl had documented his life from a distance. "This one was when you cried in the office after that difficult meeting with the banks." Emily pointed to a drawing where the male figure had his hands covering his face. "It was last month, on a Friday. You stayed alone until very late." Michael remembered that day perfectly. The meeting had been a disaster, nearly resulting in the loss of an important contract. He had indeed allowed himself a moment of weakness, crying alone in the office for the first time in years. How could she know this? "How can you see me from far away?" He closed the notebook, feeling exposed in a way he had never experienced. "There's an abandoned building across the street. They're going to demolish it soon, but for now, you can still go up to the 10th floor. From there, I can see your office perfectly." Emily spoke as if describing a common bus route. The explanation was logically plausible, but raised even more disturbing questions about the girl's life. Michael imagined an 8-year-old child climbing dangerous stairs in an abandoned building just to watch him work. "Why do you do this? Why do you watch me?" His voice carried a mixture of curiosity and genuine concern. Emily lowered her eyes, for the first time showing signs of childlike vulnerability. "Because when I see you, I feel like I belong somewhere, as if there were an invisible thread connecting me to you." The answer touched something deep in Michael's chest, an emotional region he had carefully protected for years. There was sincerity in the girl's words that transcended any attempt at manipulation. "Emily, I need to make some calls. I need to understand this situation better." He pulled out his phone again. "Can you stay here while I check on a few things? You're not going to turn me over to the authorities?" There was genuine fear in her voice now. Michael paused with his finger over the phone screen. Something inside him rebelled against the idea of treating this girl like a common intruder. "No, at least not today, but I need to understand what's going on." Emily nodded her head, showing discreet relief. "Can I finish eating? I didn't have lunch today." The simple question revealed a cruel reality that Michael had ignored throughout the entire conversation. An 8-year-old child was going hungry, surviving on scraps of food. Regardless of who she was or her claims, this was a situation that required immediate action. "Of course. And there's more food in the fridge if you want." He pointed to the brushed steel appliance. "You can take whatever you need." While Emily headed to the fridge with cautious steps, Michael moved a few meters away and dialed the number of his personal lawyer, Dr. David Richardson. The man was known for solving complex problems with absolute discretion, an essential quality at that moment. "David, it's me. I need you to come to my office now. It's urgent and confidential." Michael kept his voice low, watching Emily explore the contents of the fridge like a normal child. "Michael, it's almost 9 at night. Has something serious happened?" The lawyer's voice showed immediate concern. "It might be. I'd rather explain in person." "How long will it take you to get here?" 20 minutes at most. I'm leaving now." Michael ended the call and watched Emily prepare a sandwich with ingredients she had found. Her movements were precise and organized, as if she were truly familiar with that kitchen. She even knew where the utensils were without having to search. "Emily, I need to ask you an important question," Michael approached, adopting a more serious tone. "Do you remember where you were born?" The girl interrupted her sandwich preparation and looked him directly in the eyes. "At St. Luke's Hospital in the early hours of March 15th. My mother's name was Elizabeth Grace Bennett. She had brown hair like mine and wore a jasmine perfume." Each word was like an electric shock to Michael. Elizabeth had given birth at St. Luke's Hospital in the early hours of March 15th, exactly 15 years ago, and she really wore a French jasmine perfume that he bought every year on Valentine's Day. "How do you know this information?" His voice came out shaky, laden with emotions he struggled to control. "Because these are the only memories I have of her. Someone told me these things when I was little, before the people who were taking care of me disappeared." The answer raised more questions than answers. Michael tried to process the information logically, but every detail Emily revealed fit perfectly with facts that only he and the doctors knew. "Who was taking care of you? Where are these people now?" Emily finished the sandwich and took a bite before answering. "First, it was a lady named Mrs. Dorothy. She raised me until I was 5, but then she got very sick. Then I went to live with a family in Queens, but they had money problems and couldn't keep me anymore. Emily's narrative painted a typical picture of a child who had gone through several temporary foster families, a cruel reality common in the United States child protection system. Michael felt a pang of guilt imagining his possible daughter being passed from family to family while he built a business empire. And after the Queens family, they tried to put me in a shelter, but I ran away. That was 2 years ago. Since then, I've been on my own. Emily spoke with a simplicity that masked the harshness of her life experience. Michael did quick mental calculations. If Emily was 8 years old now and had been on the streets for 2 years, that meant she had survived alone since the age of 6. The idea was both impressive and terrifying. Weren't you afraid of living alone when you were so small? At first, yes, but I quickly learned where it was safe and where it wasn't. And I always knew that if things got too bad, I could come here. Emily gestured toward the office. This place always felt like home to me, even before I understood why. Emily's statement about feeling at home in that environment echoed disturbingly in Michael's mind. He himself had designed every detail of that office as a personal refuge, a space where he felt truly himself. The idea that his possible daughter shared the same emotional connection to the place was both touching and frightening. The sound of the elevator announced someone's arrival on the floor. Michael checked his watch and confirmed it should be Dr. David. Emily stopped eating and looked toward the hallway with an alert expression. "It's my lawyer. He's going to help us clarify some things." Michael tried to reassure her, noticing the tension that instantly arose in the girl's body. "Are you going to hand me over to him?" Emily's voice carried the same fear she had shown earlier. "No. I promise I won't do anything against you today, but I need help to properly understand this situation." Dr. David Richardson appeared at the kitchen entrance, his serious expression quickly changing to surprise upon seeing the child. The 58-year-old lawyer was known for maintaining composure in any situation, but he clearly hadn't prepared to find a girl in a school uniform in the office of his most important client. "Good evening, Michael. I see we have an unusual situation." David adjusted his glasses, discreetly observing Emily while greeting Michael. "David, this is Emily. Emily, this is Dr. David, a longtime friend." Michael made the introductions carefully, trying to maintain a casual tone despite the palpable tension in the environment. Emily nodded politely but kept her distance, clearly uncomfortable with the presence of another adult in the situation. "Michael, can we talk privately for a moment?" David discreetly indicated the direction of the conference room. "Emily, would you mind staying here for a few minutes? We won't be long." Michael waited for the girl's confirmation before following the lawyer. In the conference room, David closed the door carefully, before turning to Michael with a grave expression. "First of all, I need to know, is there any possibility this child is telling the truth about being your daughter?" The question was direct, without beating around the bush. Michael quickly recounted the main points of his conversation with Emily, including the intimate details she knew about his life and the traumatic episode of losing Elizabeth and the baby. David listened attentively, making mental notes of each piece of information. "There's a possibility you may not have considered at the time." David adopted a careful tone. "In complicated childbirths, especially when there's a risk to the mother's life, doctors sometimes make decisions that aren't fully communicated to the family." "What do you mean by that?" "In extreme situations, if a baby is born with serious health problems and the mother doesn't survive, some older hospitals had the custom of simplifying the situation for the father. It was considered an act of mercy to spare the family from going through a double grief." The implication of David's words hit Michael with full force. "Are you suggesting they lied to me? That my daughter was alive and they decided it would be better if I didn't know? I'm saying I've seen similar cases, especially 15 years ago, when hospital protocols were less strict." David paused, observing the impact of his words. "If this girl really is your daughter, she would have been put up for adoption immediately, with documents that wouldn't mention you as the father." Michael felt the world spinning around him. The possibility of having lived 15 years believing a lie was devastating. worse still, was imagining that his daughter had grown up without a family, going through multiple homes, and finally living on the streets, while he accumulated billions of dollars. How can we verify this? How do we find out the truth? First, we need to access the hospital records. I have contacts who can get confidential information without alerting the authorities. Second, a DNA test would be conclusive. David consulted his mental notes. But before that, I need to ask the girl some questions, may I? Michael nodded, though part of him feared discovering more disturbing truths. They returned to the kitchen, where they found Emily exactly where they had left her, finishing her sandwich with delicate movements. Emily, Dr. David would like to ask you some questions. Can you answer? Michael sat in one of the chairs, trying to create a less formal atmosphere. David approached slowly, adopting the gentle tone he used when dealing with young witnesses in family cases. Emily, do you remember the name of the first person who took care of you? Mrs. Dorothy. Dorothy Williams. She lived in a small house in Brooklyn, near the train station. Emily answered without hesitation. She was very good to me, but she got sick with a lung disease. David discreetly took notes on a small notepad. And do you remember the family from Queens? What were their names? The Thompson family. They were James, Susan, and their 2 children, Daniel and Sarah. They were kind to me, but they lost their jobs and had to move to a smaller house. Emily paused, showing genuine sadness. I understood they couldn't take me with them. Emily's answers were too detailed to be made up. David realized the girl was talking about real people, with full names and specific situations that could be verified. Emily, do you have any documents? Birth certificate? Vaccination card? Anything that proves your identity? David continued his line of investigation. Emily shook her head. Mrs. Dorothy had some papers of mine, but when she got sick, a social worker came and took everything. I never saw those documents again. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. Do you remember the name of that social worker? David insisted, sensing that could be an important clue. Dr. Jennifer something. She was young and wore round glasses. She said she was going to place me with a good family, but things didn't work out as she promised. Michael watched the conversation in silence, impressed with the consistency and level of detail in Emily's answers. Every piece of information seemed genuine, with no signs of rehearsal or fabrication. Emily, there's one more important question. David leaned slightly forward. Do you have any birthmarks or scars that someone might have mentioned to you? Emily rolled up her left sleeve, revealing a small crescent-shaped mark on the inside of her wrist. Mrs. Dorothy said I was born with this. She told me it was a sign that I was special. Michael felt his heart stop for a moment. Elizabeth had exactly the same mark in the same place. It was a genetic trait she had inherited from her mother, and always believed she would pass on to her children. He had never mentioned this to anyone after the supposed loss of the baby. Michael. David noticed the sudden paleness on his friend's face. Is there something about that mark? Elizabeth had the same mark in the same place, Michael whispered, unconsciously touching his own wrist. It's hereditary in her family. The silence that followed was loaded with implications. David mentally registered another piece of evidence that corroborated Emily's story, while Michael struggled to process the growing likelihood that the girl was truly his daughter. Dr. David, can I ask you a question? Emily broke the silence with her childish voice, yet filled with maturity. Of course, Emily. If I really am his daughter, she discreetly pointed toward Michael, does that mean I don't have to live on the street anymore? The simple and direct question revealed the reality behind the entire investigation. Regardless of the legal and emotional complexities, there was an 8-year-old child who had spent the last 2 years surviving alone on the streets of New York City. David looked at Michael, waiting for some direction on how to respond. The situation had become much more complex than a simple question of paternity. It now involved immediate responsibility for the well-being of a child in a vulnerable situation. Emily, no matter what we find out, you won't be going back to the streets today. Michael made the decision spontaneously, surprising both David and the girl herself. We'll find a safe place for you to stay while we sort this out. Emily's eyes filled with tears she tried to hide, quickly lowering her face. It was the first time since the conversation began that she showed a completely childlike and vulnerable reaction. "Michael, we need to talk about the legal aspects of this decision," David whispered, trying to maintain discretion. "I know. But I can't let an 8-year-old go back to the street, especially not after what we discovered today." Michael stood up, showing a determination David had rarely seen in him. "We'll do things right, but first, we'll make sure she's safe." Emily raised her face, revealing tears silently streaming down her cheeks. "Thank you," she murmured, and for the first time, her voice carried the fragility typical of a child her age. David observed the interaction between Michael and Emily, noticing subtle signs of an emotional connection that transcended the rationality of the situation. As an experienced lawyer in family cases, he had developed an instinct for identifying genuine bonds between people, and something in the dynamic between those two suggested a deeper connection than casual circumstances. "Michael, if we're going to move forward with this, we need to do everything by the book. First, we'll need to notify the appropriate authorities about Emily's situation. Second, we'll have to formalize a process for temporary custody until paternity is confirmed." David assumed his professional role, mentally organizing the necessary steps. "How long would that take?" Michael asked, watching Emily wipe her tears with her shirt sleeve. "If we're lucky, and the DNA tests go quickly, a few weeks. But Emily has been in an irregular situation for 2 years, so the process could be more complicated." David paused, considering all the variables. "There's also the matter of finding the people who took care of her before. Their testimonies will be crucial to building a legal history." Emily, who had remained silent listening to the adults' conversation, timidly raised her hand. "I can help find the Thompson family. I know where they moved after they left me." Her offer demonstrated a touching willingness to collaborate with the process that would determine her future. "That would be very helpful, Emily." David smiled genuinely at her for the first time. "Any information you have could speed up the process." Michael observed the interaction and noticed that Emily was behaving like a mature child who understood the gravity of the situation, yet still maintained the innocence typical of her age. There was something deeply touching about how she offered to help resolve her own situation. "For now, let's focus on what's most important, making sure Emily has a safe place to sleep tonight." Michael took control of the situation. "David, do you know any trustworthy family who could take care of her temporarily? I know a couple who works with temporary foster care. They're serious people, experienced with children in similar situations." David checked his phone. "I can call them now, but we'll need to explain the situation." Emily approached Michael with hesitant steps. "Can I stay here with you tonight? I promise I won't be any trouble." The simple question touched something deep in Michael's chest. The idea of sending a child who could be his daughter to sleep in strangers' homes after years of living on the streets seemed cruel and unnecessary. "Emily, my apartment isn't set up for a child. I don't have clothes for you or things you might need." He tried to explain the situation practically, though his voice showed reluctance to separate from her. "I don't need much. I've slept in much worse places." Emily spoke simply, without self-pity. "And I promise in the morning you can take me wherever you want." David observed Michael's emotional dilemma and decided to intervene with a practical solution. "Michael, legally there's no problem with Emily staying with you tonight, as long as it's a temporary measure until we formalize a provisional custody." He paused, considering the risks. "In fact, it might even benefit the process to show that you're willing to take responsibility for her immediately." The lawyer's approval removed the last obstacle in Michael's mind. He knelt in front of Emily, coming down to her eye level. "All right, you can stay with me tonight, but tomorrow we'll start doing everything properly, with papers and the right documents." His voice carried a tenderness he hadn't expressed in years. Emily nodded energetically, a genuine smile lighting up her face for the first time since she'd arrived at the office. It was as if a tension she'd carried for years had finally been relieved. "David, can you start the investigation tomorrow morning? I want answers as soon as possible." Michael stood up, his mind already organizing priorities for the coming days. "I'll start first thing. I'll contact the hospital, look for records of Dorothy Williams, and try to locate the Thompson family. David put away his notes. I'll also arrange for the DNA test collection later this week. Emily, who had remained quiet during the adults' planning, discreetly tugged at Michael's sleeve. Can I bring my drawings? She pointed to the notebook that had been left on the kitchen counter. Of course. Take everything that's yours. Michael watched Emily carefully put the notebook into her small backpack, which apparently contained all her worldly belongings. David said goodbye, promising to call the next morning with the first results of his investigation. After the lawyer left, Michael found himself alone with Emily for the first time, without the pressure of explanations or questioning. "Are you sleepy?" he asked, noticing it was almost 10 at night and the girl had been through an emotionally intense day. "A little, but I'm not used to going to bed early." "In the streets, it's safer to stay up late." Emily replied naturally, revealing another aspect of her life that Michael would need to understand gradually. The observation about street safety reminded Michael that, regardless of the family situation, Emily had survived alone in a hostile environment for 2 years. This required a level of maturity and vigilance that no child should have to develop. "In my apartment, you can sleep peacefully. There's security 24 hours. He tried to reassure her, though he realized that 2 decades of life on the streets wouldn't be easily forgotten. They left the office together, Michael watching how Emily moved through the space with familiarity. In the elevator, she naturally positioned herself beside him, as if they had made that journey together hundreds of times. Michael's apartment in the Upper East Side perfectly reflected his personality, modern, minimalist, and impeccably organized. Emily observed every detail with silent curiosity, her eyes taking in the opulence without showing envy or discomfort. "The house is very beautiful," she commented politely, carefully placing her backpack on a sofa. "Thank you. You must be tired after everything that happened today." Michael realized he didn't know how to interact naturally with a child in his own home. Emily went to the living room window, which offered a nighttime view even more spectacular than the one from the office. She stayed silent for a few minutes, watching the city lights as if memorizing every detail. "From which building did you use to watch me?" Michael approached, curious about her perspective. Emily pointed to a lower structure in the distance. "That one there. From the 10th floor, I could see your office perfectly. It took me a few weeks to figure out which window was yours. The idea of a 6- or 7-year-old child climbing 10 floors of an abandoned building just to watch him work was simultaneously touching and terrifying." Michael tried to imagine the determination needed for that daily routine. "Emily, can I ask you a personal question?" He sat on the sofa, indicating for her to join him. "Of course." Emily settled on the other side of the sofa, maintaining a respectful distance. "During those 2 years on the streets, did you never think about seeking official help? Going to a police station or something like that?" Emily shook her head. "The street kids always told me to avoid those people. They said they put you in bad places and separate you from any family you might still have." The answer revealed a harsh reality of the United States child protection system. Emily had chosen life on the streets because she believed it would be better than institutional care. "But you came looking for me. Why did you take that risk with me?" Emily thought carefully before answering, as if trying to translate feelings into words. "Because when I watched you working, I felt something here." She placed her hand over her chest. "As if my heart knew something my mind didn't understand. It was different from anything I've ever felt for other people." Emily's explanation touched Michael deeply. There was a purity in her words that transcended any attempt at manipulation or material interest. "And now? What are you feeling now that we're here together?" "Peace," Emily replied immediately. "For the first time in a long time, I feel like I can completely relax." Michael observed Emily's posture and noticed that she truly seemed different. The constant tension he had noticed in her throughout their meeting at the office had disappeared. Her shoulders were relaxed and her breathing deeper. "Emily, tomorrow our life is going to change a lot. No matter what we discover about our family, you won't have to fend for yourself anymore." Michael spoke with a conviction that surprised him. "I promise I'll take care of you." Emily looked directly into his eyes, and for the first time since they'd met, she smiled completely. It was a childlike, genuine, and radiant smile that completely transformed her expression. "I always knew this would happen someday," she said simply. "I just didn't know when." The conversation was interrupted by the sound of Emily's stomach, reminding Michael that she had only eaten one sandwich all day. "Are you hungry? I can make something for you." He stood up, heading toward the open kitchen. "Can I help?" Emily followed him, showing genuine interest in participating. Cooking together turned out to be a surprisingly natural experience for both of them. Emily knew basic cooking techniques she'd learned out of necessity, while Michael discovered he enjoyed having company in the kitchen for the first time in years. "Where did you learn to chop onions like that?" Michael asked, impressed with Emily's skill. "Mrs. Dorothy taught me. She said every girl needed to know how to cook to get by in life." Emily spoke affectionately when mentioning the woman who had been her first caregiver. "Do you miss her?" "Very much. She was the only person who really cared about me." Emily paused her knife movement. "Until now." Emily's final remark carried an emotional weight that made Michael realize the responsibility he had taken on. He wasn't just a possible father discovering a lost daughter. He was an adult, becoming the parental figure for a child who had faced abandonment multiple times. They ate dinner in comfortable silence, Emily eating with genuine appetite for the first time in a long while. Michael observed her table manners. She had learned basic etiquette at some point, probably from Dorothy, but there were also signs of someone accustomed to eating quickly out of precaution. "Emily, tomorrow we'll need to buy some clothes for you, and school supplies too." Michael began planning the immediate practical needs. "Do I have to go back to school?" Emily asked with genuine curiosity. "Of course. Education is fundamental." Michael paused, realizing he knew nothing about her current school life. "Are you enrolled in any school now?" "Thomas Jefferson Elementary School downtown. But I miss a lot because sometimes I can't get there." Emily explained without shame or self-pity. Michael made mental notes about arranging school transportation and speaking with Emily's teachers about her situation. There would be much to organize in the coming days. After dinner, Michael showed Emily the guest room, who observed the king-size bed with silent admiration. "It's very big. I can sleep on the couch if you prefer," Emily offered, showing consideration for his habits. "The room is yours tonight. Tomorrow we'll see how to better arrange things." Michael left clean towels on the bed. "Do you need anything to sleep?" "Can I take a shower?" Emily asked timidly. The simple question reminded Michael that basic luxuries like hot water and soap hadn't been available to Emily during her life on the streets. He felt a pang of sadness, imagining an 8-year-old without access to such fundamental things. "Of course, there's shampoo, conditioner, and soaps in the bathroom. Use whatever you want." He indicated the direction of the ensuite bathroom. Emily picked up her backpack and headed to the bathroom. Michael was alone for the first time since he had found the girl, and the silence of his house seemed different. There was a new presence there, an energy that transformed the environment in subtle but noticeable ways. He used the time to call his personal secretary and cancel all his appointments for the next morning. Regardless of the results of David's investigations, Michael knew his life had fundamentally changed that day. When Emily emerged from the bathroom, wearing the same clothes but visibly cleaner and more relaxed, she found Michael setting up the sofa bed in the living room. "What's that for?" she asked, watching him arrange pillows. "I'm sleeping here tonight. I want to be nearby in case you need anything during the night." Michael explained his decision naturally. Emily watched him silently for a moment before speaking. "You don't have to do this. I'm not afraid to sleep alone." "I know, but I am," Michael admitted honestly. "I'm afraid of waking up tomorrow and finding you've disappeared again." Michael's vulnerable admission touched Emily deeply. She approached him with hesitant steps. "Can I give you a hug?" she asked timidly. Michael knelt down, coming to her eye level, and Emily hugged him with unexpected strength. It was a hug filled with years of loneliness and need for human connection. Michael returned the embrace, feeling an intense emotion he hadn't experienced since Elizabeth's death. "Good night, Dad," Emily whispered before pulling away. The word Dad, spoken so naturally, made Michael's heart race. Regardless of the DNA test results, something profound had been established between them on that first day. "Good night, Emily," he replied, his voice filled with emotions he could barely control. Emily headed to the bedroom, stopping at the door to look back toward Michael one more time. "Thank you for not sending me away," she said simply before closing the door. Michael remained alone in the living room, processing the extraordinary events of the day. In less than 4 hours, his structured and predictable life had been completely transformed by the appearance of a girl who claimed to be his daughter. He lay down on the sofa bed, but sleep didn't come easily. His mind was filled with questions about Emily, about Elizabeth, and about the future possibilities opening before him. For the first time in 15 years, Michael Bennett had something more important than business occupying his thoughts. During the night, he woke to a soft sound coming from Emily's room. Worried, he quietly approached the door and realized she was having a nightmare, murmuring incomprehensible words in restless sleep. Michael hesitated at the door, unsure whether to wake her or let her sleep. The situation was new to him. He had no experience dealing with traumatized children. He decided to knock gently on the door. "Emily, are you okay?" he whispered. The murmuring stopped immediately. A few seconds later, Emily opened the door, her eyes still sleepy but alert. "Sorry if I woke you. Sometimes I have bad dreams," she explained naturally, as if nightmares were a normal part of her routine. "Do you want to talk about it?" Michael sat on the edge of the bed, maintaining a respectful distance. Emily shook her head no. "There are always dreams about people leaving me, but this time was different." "Different how?" "This time, in the dream, someone stayed." She smiled timidly. "I think it was you." Emily's observation touched Michael deeply. The idea that his presence was influencing even her nightmares demonstrated the emotional impact that first day had caused. "Can you get back to sleep?" he asked carefully. "I think so, but—" Emily hesitated before continuing. "Can you stay here until I fall asleep? You don't have to say anything. Just be here." Michael nodded, pulling a chair closer to the bed. Emily lay down again, pulling the comforter up to her chin. Within minutes, her breathing became regular and deep. Michael remained seated, watching Emily's peaceful face as she slept. There was something profoundly right about that scene, a sense of completeness he hadn't felt in years. Regardless of the test results to come, he already knew that girl had become an essential part of his life. When he finally returned to the couch, Michael managed to sleep deeply for the first time in months. His usual nightmares about Elizabeth were replaced by dreams where she was alive, smiling as she saw him and Emily together. Morning arrived with soft light streaming through the panoramic windows of the apartment. Michael woke to the sound of movement in the kitchen, and for a moment thought he was dreaming. Then he remembered the events of the previous night and quickly got up. Emily was in the kitchen, efficiently making coffee. She had found bread, butter, and fruit, arranging a simple but well-presented breakfast. "Good morning," she greeted cheerfully, as if living there were the most natural thing in the world. "Good morning, Emily. You didn't have to make breakfast." Michael approached, impressed by her initiative. "I like to help. Mrs. Dorothy always said breakfast is the most important meal of the day." Emily placed 2 cups on the table, remembering to add 3 spoons of sugar to Michael's cup. The simple gesture of Emily preparing coffee exactly how he liked it was further evidence of her detailed observation during the months of surveillance. There was an intimacy in that care that went beyond casual knowledge. "Emily, Dr. David will call shortly. Are you ready to begin the official investigation?" Michael sat at the table watching her expression. "I am. I want to uncover the truth as much as you do," Emily replied with a maturity that continued to surprise him. Michael's phone rang exactly at 8 o'clock, as promised. David had started the investigations before sunrise. "Michael, I have the first information. Can you talk now?" The lawyer's voice showed urgency. "Go ahead, Emily is here with me." Michael put the call on speaker so she could follow along. "I managed to locate records for Dorothy Williams in Brooklyn. She did pass away 3 years ago from lung complications. In her medical records, there's mention of a child under her care who was transferred to a foster family after her death. Emily stopped eating, paying full attention to the conversation. "And the Thompson family from Queens?" Michael asked. "I found them too. James Thompson lost his job at an auto parts factory 2.5 years ago. The family moved to a smaller house in Yonkers. I have their current address." David's information exactly matched the details Emily had provided the night before. Every name, location, and situation perfectly corresponded to the official records. "There's something more important, Michael. I got preliminary access to St. Luke's hospital records from 15 years ago." David paused dramatically. "There are significant irregularities in the documents from the day Elizabeth gave birth." Michael felt his heart race. Emily instinctively placed her hand over his, a gesture of support that seemed completely natural. "What kind of irregularities?" "The official report states that both the mother and the baby did not survive, but there's a second set of documents, apparently filed separately, indicating that a female baby was born alive and transferred to the care of a specialized nurse." The silence that followed was charged with tension. Emily squeezed Michael's hand, showing she understood the importance of these revelations. "David, does that mean that—" Michael couldn't finish the sentence. "It means there's a real possibility that you were lied to 15 years ago. And if this is true, Emily could really be your daughter." Emily let out the breath she was holding, tears of relief beginning to form in her eyes. Michael pulled her close, hugging her as he processed the implications of those discoveries. "What do we do now?" Michael asked. "First, we'll talk to the Thompson family today. Second, I'll arrange the DNA test still today. Third, I need to investigate more deeply what happened at the hospital that night." "Dr. David, can I come along when you speak with the Thompson family?" Emily interrupted timidly. "Of course, Emily. Your testimony will be crucial to understanding the whole story." After ending the call, Michael and Emily remained embraced in silence for a few minutes. The possibility that 15 years of grief and guilt had been based on a lie was devastating, but it also offered hope for rebuilding. "How do you feel about all this?" Michael asked Emily. "Scared and happy at the same time," she admitted honestly. "Scared because I don't know what our life will be like. Happy because maybe I'll finally have a real family." Emily's response showed impressive emotional maturity for an 8-year-old child. She understood both the opportunities and the complexities of the situation. "Emily, regardless of what the tests show, you already have a family. You already have me." Michael spoke with a conviction that surprised him. Emily looked him directly in the eyes, assessing the sincerity of his words. After a few seconds, she smiled completely. "So I can call you Dad, even if the tests come out wrong?" "You can," Michael answered without hesitation. "And I'll call you daughter because that's what you already are to me." The morning was dedicated to practical arrangements. Michael cancelled all his appointments for the week, delegating responsibilities to his trusted team. Emily accompanied him on each call, observing how he reorganized his life to include her. "You don't need to cancel everything because of me," Emily commented after the 5th consecutive call. "Yes, I do. You're more important than any meeting," Michael replied naturally, realizing he truly believed that. The first stop was a children's department store where Emily needed basic clothes. Michael discovered he had no idea how to buy clothes for children, while Emily showed simple and practical preferences. "You can choose anything you want." Michael gestured toward the shelves full of options. Emily looked at the clothes with admiration, but her choices were surprisingly conservative. She picked 2 pairs of jeans, 3 basic t-shirts, a jacket, and comfortable shoes. "Just that?" Michael asked, expecting her to choose much more. "It's more than I've had in the last 2 years," Emily replied with simplicity, without any bitterness. The answer reminded Michael that Emily had learned to value basic needs, not unnecessary luxuries. He decided to respect her choices, although mentally planning to come back later to buy more items when she felt more comfortable. At the lab for the DNA test, Emily showed scientific curiosity about the process, asking smart questions to the nurse. Michael realized she was naturally intelligent and thirsty for knowledge, traits that would have been wasted on the streets. "How long does the result take?" Emily asked. 5 business days in normal cases, but Dr. David managed to have it done urgently, so it should be ready in 2 days. The nurse explained while collecting the samples. In the afternoon, they headed to Yonkers to meet the Thompson family. The address corresponded to a small but well-kept house with a modest garden in front. Emily grew visibly nervous as she approached the door. They were good to me. They just couldn't keep me because it became financially difficult, Emily explained, as if defending people she still considered important. James Thompson answered the door, a 45-year-old man with a tired but kind expression. His face immediately lit up upon recognizing Emily. "Emily, my God, how you've grown!" He hugged her warmly before noticing Michael and David. "Susan, come here, Emily's back." Susan Thompson appeared quickly, followed by 2 teenagers, who were clearly Daniel and Sarah. The warm reception from the family confirmed that Emily had been genuinely loved during her stay there. "Where have you been, girl? We were so worried when you disappeared." Susan hugged Emily with tears in her eyes. "I managed on my own, but now—" Emily looked at Michael affectionately. "Now, maybe I've found my real father." The Thompson family fell silent for a moment, processing the information. James invited everyone inside, and Susan prepared coffee while Emily explained how she had found Michael. "We always knew Emily was special. She was very smart and said things a child her age shouldn't know," Susan commented, serving the coffee. "But we never imagined she had a wealthy family." David took advantage of the relaxed atmosphere to ask specific questions about the period when Emily had lived with them. "Do you remember how Emily came to you?" David asked diplomatically. "Through the social worker, Dr. Jennifer Carter. She said Emily needed a temporary family while they looked for relatives," James answered. "She brought some documents, but later took everything away when we had to let Emily go." Emily silently confirmed the details, showing that her memory of the events was accurate. "Do you know what happened to Dr. Carter?" David continued his investigation. "No. After we lost contact with Emily, we tried to look for the social worker, but they told us she no longer worked at the agency." Susan explained sadly. "We felt terrible about having abandoned Emily, but we really couldn't manage." Daniel, the family's oldest son, spoke directly to Emily. "Emily, did you go hungry? Were you in dangerous places?" His genuine concern showed that she had been treated like a sister in the family. "Sometimes, but I learned to take care of myself, and I always knew that one day things would get better." Emily replied with maturity, trying to reassure the people who had cared about her. Sarah, the youngest daughter, had remained silent, but approached Emily with a small object in her hands. "You forgot this when you left." Sarah handed over a small cloth doll, clearly handmade. Emily received the doll with genuine emotion, hugging it to her chest. "Thank you for keeping it. I thought I had lost it forever." The scene touched everyone present. Michael realized that Emily had left emotional traces in all the people she had met, creating genuine bonds despite the transience of her situations. "Mr. Bennett," James addressed Michael formally, "if Emily is really your daughter, we want you to know that she is a wonderful girl, smart, polite, and with a huge heart." "I can see that," Michael replied sincerely, "and I want to thank you for taking care of her, even if for a short time. You made a difference in her life." The Thompson family provided all the documents they still had about Emily, including school and medical records from the period when she had lived with them. David copied everything meticulously, building a more complete legal history. During the farewell, it became clear that Emily would keep in touch with the Thompson family. They had become part of her story in important ways, and Michael understood that preserving these connections would be crucial for her emotional well-being. In the car during the ride back to New York City, Emily remained silent for a long time, hugging the cloth doll she had recovered. "What are you thinking about?" Michael asked gently. "I'm thinking that maybe all the bad things that happened to me happened for a reason, to lead me to you." Emily looked out the window. "Mrs. Dorothy always said God works in mysterious ways." Emily's observation showed a mature perspective on adversity that impressed Michael. Despite having faced abandonment and hardships, she had developed an optimistic view of her future. "Emily, do you mind if I ask you a question about your life on the streets?" Michael hesitated before continuing. You can ask. Were you scared? How did you manage to stay safe being so small? Emily thought carefully before answering. I was scared many times, but I quickly learned where it was dangerous and where it was safe. There were other children on the street who helped me learn the rules. Other children? Yes. There are many children alone in New York City. They form groups to protect each other. Emily paused, but I never managed to fully integrate into those groups. Why? Because I always knew my situation was temporary, that I was looking for something specific, not just surviving. Emily looked directly at him. I was looking for you. The conviction in Emily's voice about having been looking for him specifically was touching and unsettling at the same time. Michael tried to imagine a 6-year-old child facing the streets of New York City with the certainty that she would find her father someday. How can you be so sure that I am your father, even before the tests? Michael asked the question he had been avoiding. Emily smiled, showing an inner peace that transcended her age. Because when I'm near you, I feel like I've come home. And I never felt that with anyone else, not even with the people who were good to me. Emily's simple and direct answer ended any doubt Michael might have had about the authenticity of her feelings. Regardless of biology, there was a real emotional connection between them. Back at the apartment, they established an evening routine that would become traditional in the coming days. Emily prepared something simple for dinner, while Michael organized work papers, but now with his attention divided between business and parenthood. "Dad," Emily called him during dinner, using the term naturally, "can I make a suggestion about your work?" "Of course. What do you have in mind?" Michael was curious about her perspective. "You always work until very late and on weekends. That doesn't make you happy. I noticed when I was watching you." Emily chewed thoughtfully. "Maybe you can work a little less now that you have family." Emily's observation was surprisingly insightful. She had identified a pattern in his life that he himself recognized as problematic, but had never found motivation to change. "You're right. I work too much because I didn't have anything else important in my life," Michael admitted. "But now I have you. And now you have to teach me important things, like how to ride a bike, how to do homework, how to choose good friends." Emily listed the activities as if she were planning a paternal curriculum. Emily's list about the responsibilities of a father made Michael realize how little he knew about practical parenting. He had been focused on legal and financial aspects, but Emily was talking about emotional connection and daily guidance. "Emily, I've never been a father before. I'll need to learn along with you." He admitted his inexperience honestly. "That's okay. I've never had a father before either. We can learn together." Emily smiled with understanding. What matters is wanting to learn, right? Emily's simple wisdom about relationships continued to surprise Michael. She had developed an emotional maturity that compensated for her life inexperience, creating an interesting balance in her personality. That night, Emily had no nightmares. Michael discreetly checked a few times, finding her sleeping peacefully, hugging the doll she had recovered from the Thompson family. The emotional stability she demonstrated was a positive indicator of her adaptation to the new situation. The next morning, David called early with more information about their investigations. "Michael, I managed to locate Dr. Jennifer Carter. She no longer works as a social worker, but agreed to meet us this afternoon." David seemed excited about the progress. "She said she has important information about Emily." "Did she seem willing to cooperate?" "Very. In fact, she seemed relieved when I mentioned Emily's name, as if she had been waiting for this conversation for years." Jennifer's reaction suggested there were aspects of Emily's story that hadn't been revealed. Michael felt a mixture of anticipation and apprehension about what they would discover. "Can Emily come along?" Michael asked. "I think it would be crucial. Jennifer specifically asked to speak with Emily personally." Emily listened to the conversation in silence, showing nervousness for the first time since they had begun the investigations. "Are you worried about something?" Michael asked after ending the call. "Dr. Jennifer was kind to me, but she was also the one who separated me from the Thompson family. I don't know if I can trust her completely." Emily expressed her reservations honestly. Emily's caution about Jennifer was understandable. The social worker had been responsible for one of the most traumatic separations of her life, even if for practical reasons. "Do you still want to go?" "If not, I can go alone first." Michael offered the option. "I want to go. I need to hear what she has to say." Emily showed courage despite her apprehension. The afternoon approached quickly, filled with household activities that had become surprisingly enjoyable for Michael. Emily transformed mundane tasks into moments of connection, telling stories about her experiences while helping with small chores. "Dad, can I tell you a secret?" Emily asked while folding her new clothes. "Of course." "Sometimes when I was really scared on the streets, I imagined conversations with you, as if you were with me, protecting me." Emily spoke without looking up. "It helped me not give up." Emily's revelation about having imagined conversations with him during moments of fear touched Michael deeply. The idea that his daughter had created his mental presence as a source of comfort during dangerous situations was simultaneously touching and heartbreaking. "What did you imagine I would say?" Michael asked gently. "Normal things that parents say, that everything would be okay, that you would find me, that I was brave and smart." Emily smiled timidly. "They were conversations that made me feel less alone." Michael realized that Emily had developed sophisticated emotional survival mechanisms to deal with trauma and abandonment. Her ability to create hope and self-esteem in adverse circumstances demonstrated impressive resilience. "Emily, you really are brave and smart, and I found you." He confirmed the statements she had imagined for years. "I know. Sometimes the things we imagine end up becoming reality," Emily replied with profound simplicity. The meeting with Jennifer Carter was scheduled for 4 in the afternoon at a discreet cafe in the Greenwich Village neighborhood. Michael chose the public location to keep Emily comfortable and ensure a non-intimidating atmosphere. Jennifer arrived promptly, a 35-year-old woman with a professional appearance but showing visible signs of emotional stress. Her eyes immediately went to Emily, who stayed close to Michael. "Emily, my, how you've grown." Jennifer approached cautiously, as if unsure how the girl would react. Emily remained politely distant, watching Jennifer attentively but without apparent hostility. "Dr. Jennifer, thank you for agreeing to meet with us," Michael began formally. "We need to understand some aspects of Emily's history." Jennifer sat down, looking alternately at Michael and Emily before speaking. "I knew this day would come eventually. I've carried this burden for years." She sighed deeply. "Emily's story isn't what you think." David leaned forward, preparing to record important information. "Dr. Jennifer, can you tell us how Emily originally came into your care?" David began with objective questions. Jennifer paused as if organizing complex thoughts. "Emily should never have entered the official child protection system. When she came into my care, I was working in an irregular situation." Jennifer looked directly at Emily. "Someone paid me to ensure you would never be found by your biological family." The silence that followed was tense. Michael felt his blood run cold as he processed the implications of that revelation. "What do you mean by that?" Michael asked in a controlled voice, though he was struggling with anger. 15 years ago, I was a recently graduated social worker with significant financial debts. Someone offered me a substantial amount to ensure that a specific child was placed in an informal adoption and disappeared from official records. Jennifer spoke quickly, as if wanting to get the weight of those words off her chest. Emily squeezed Michael's hand, showing she understood the seriousness of what was being revealed. "Who paid you?" David asked directly. "A man who identified himself only as Dr. Stevens. He said he represented the interests of an influential family that wanted to avoid legal complications related to an inheritance." Jennifer avoided looking directly into Michael's eyes. Michael felt a chill run down his spine. Dr. Stevens was the name of the doctor who had given him the news about Elizabeth and the baby's supposed loss. The pieces of a sinister puzzle were beginning to fit together. "Jennifer, are you saying Dr. Stevens paid you to hide my daughter from me?" Michael struggled to keep his voice calm. "I didn't know you were the father at the time. I only knew I was supposed to ensure that a girl born at St. Luke's Hospital on March 15th was discreetly placed with a substitute family and never tracked again. Emily, who had remained silent during the conversation, finally spoke. Why did you agree to do that? Her question was simple but filled with genuine curiosity, not accusation. Jennifer looked directly at Emily for the first time, tears beginning to form in her eyes. Because I was young, inexperienced, and financially desperate, I thought it would just be a case of unofficial adoption, something that happened frequently at the time. Jennifer paused. I didn't imagine I would be separating a child from her legitimate father. And after, why did you continue hiding the truth? David pressed. When I realized the magnitude of what I had done, it was already too late. Doctor, Stevens warned me that revealing any information would result in serious legal consequences for me. Jennifer wiped away her tears. I was an accomplice to a crime. I could lose my career and face prison. Michael tried to process the information that his own daughter had been deliberately hidden from him through an elaborate scheme involving corruption and document forgery. Jennifer, can you give us any information about this Dr. Stevens? Address, phone number, anything? David continued his investigation. No, he always contacted me. I never had a way to find him. But, Jennifer hesitated. There's something else you need to know about Emily. Emily leaned forward, obviously interested in learning more about her own story. What? Michael asked. Emily wasn't the only child involved in this scheme. Dr. Stevens mentioned that there were other similar cases, other families being deliberately kept apart. Jennifer revealed even more disturbing information. The implication that there was a systematic scheme to separate families for financial or inheritance reasons was terrifying. Michael began to understand that Emily might have been a victim of something much larger and more sinister than he had initially imagined. Do you have names, dates, any information about these other cases? David asked urgently. No. Each case was handled separately. Doctor, Stevens was very careful not to let me know details about other situations. Jennifer shook her head. Emily remained surprisingly calm during these revelations, as if she were processing information that confirmed suspicions she already had. Dr. Jennifer, have you regretted doing this? Emily asked with impressive maturity. Every day since then, especially after I started getting to know you and realized what a special child you were. Jennifer replied sincerely. You deserved to be with your true family from the start. Jennifer's response showed genuine remorse, but it didn't lessen the severity of her actions or the devastating impact they had on Emily and Michael's lives. Jennifer, why did you agree to meet with us today? Why reveal all this now? Michael asked. Because when Dr. David called me mentioning that you had met, I realized it was my chance to try to repair at least part of the damage I caused. Jennifer looked directly at Emily. And because you deserve to know the truth about your story. David took detailed notes on each piece of information revealed, mentally building strategies to investigate Dr. Stevens and the broader scheme that Jennifer had described. Is there any documentation that proves these transactions? Receipts, contracts, anything that could serve as evidence? David asked. I kept some documents over the years as a precaution. Not much, but maybe it's enough to corroborate my story. Jennifer opened her purse and took out a yellowed envelope. It's all here. David quickly examined the contents of the envelope, finding bank transfer receipts, handwritten notes, and a document that appeared to be an informal contract. This is enough for us to start a formal investigation, David confirmed, organizing the papers carefully. Michael watched Emily throughout the conversation, impressed by her ability to maintain composure in the face of such disturbing revelations about her own life. Emily, how do you feel about all this? Michael asked gently. Sad for having lost so much time away from you. Relieved to finally understand why my life was so confusing. Emily paused thoughtfully, and determined to make sure this doesn't happen to other children. Emily's response showed not just emotional maturity, but also a sense of social justice that was impressive for an 8-year-old. Jennifer spoke directly to Emily before saying goodbye. Emily, I know I can't undo what I did, but I want you to know that I watched you grow from a distance whenever I could, and I always hoped you'd find the happiness you deserved. Emily watched Jennifer for a moment before responding. "Dr. Carter, you did something wrong, but at least now you're trying to make it right. That counts for something." Emily demonstrated a capacity for forgiveness that surprised everyone present. During the ride back home, Emily remained thoughtful, processing all the information that had been revealed. "Dad, are you mad at Dr. Carter?" Emily asked. "I am, but I also understand she was young and was manipulated by more powerful people." Michael tried to explain his complex feelings about the situation. "Do you think we'll be able to find this Dr. Stevens?" "We'll try. He needs to answer for what he did to us and to other families." Michael felt determination growing inside him. Emily nodded, showing she understood the importance of seeking justice, not just for them, but for other potential victims. That night, while Emily slept, Michael stayed awake reflecting on the day's revelations. The idea that someone had deliberately destroyed his family for financial motivations stirred an anger he had rarely felt. David called late at night with preliminary updates. "Michael, the information provided by Jennifer is consistent with the documents we found. There's definitely evidence of irregularities at the hospital." David spoke quietly. "And I got a contact who might help us track down Dr. Stevens." "Great. I want answers as soon as possible." "There's one more thing. The DNA test results came in earlier than we expected." Michael felt his heart speed up. "And?" "Emily is your biological daughter, without a shadow of a doubt." The relief and emotion Michael felt were overwhelming. Although he already knew emotionally that Emily was his daughter, having scientific confirmation removed any lingering uncertainty. "Thank you, David. I'll tell Emily tomorrow." After ending the call, Michael quietly went to the room where Emily was sleeping. He watched her peaceful face, now knowing with absolute certainty that he was looking at his biological daughter. "Elizabeth," he whispered to himself, "our daughter has come home." The next morning, Michael woke Emily with a special breakfast and an envelope containing the DNA test results. "Emily, I have important news for you." He sat on the edge of the bed as she woke up. Emily sat up immediately, sensing the seriousness of the moment. "Did the results come?" she asked with a mixture of anxiety and expectation. "They did, and they confirm what we both already knew." Michael smiled. "You're officially my daughter." Emily received the news with a radiant smile that lit up the whole room. She jumped out of bed and hugged Michael tightly. I knew it from the first day," she exclaimed with genuine joy. "And now we're going to make everything official. We'll get all the necessary documents so you can legally be my daughter." Michael hugged her back, feeling a completeness he hadn't experienced in 15 years. "Does that mean I can change my last name to Bennett?" Emily asked excitedly. "If you want to, yes. Emily Bennett has a nice ring to it, don't you think?" Michael joked. "Emily Bennett." She repeated the name, testing how it sounded. "Perfect." The rest of the morning was dedicated to celebrating the official confirmation of their family relationship. Emily displayed a childlike joy that had been contained during the previous days, as if she was finally allowing herself to fully believe in her new reality. David arrived at the apartment in the early afternoon with more significant developments about the investigation. "Michael, we managed to locate Dr. Stevens. He still works at St. Luke's Hospital, but in an administrative position." David seemed satisfied with the progress. "Still at the same hospital?" Michael was surprised by the man's audacity. Apparently he built a respectable career there, specializing in ethical and administrative matters. David paused ironically. Ironic, considering his past conduct. Emily listened to the conversation with interest, but without showing the fear that might be expected. "Are we going to confront him?" she asked directly. "We are, but first, we need to prepare properly. We want to make sure he can't deny or destroy evidence." David explained his strategy. "Emily, do you want to be part of this confrontation?" Michael asked, wanting to ensure she felt in control of her own story. "I do. He needs to see what he did to me. He needs to understand that I'm not just a document in a file, but a real person." Emily showed impressive determination. Her maturity and sense of justice continued to surprise Michael. She had transformed her traumatic experiences into strength and determination to seek the truth. Very well, let's schedule a meeting with Dr. Stevens for tomorrow. David began planning the approach. David, I want you to record everything. If Dr. Stevens confessed involvement in a larger scheme, we need evidence that can help other families. Michael showed that his motivation went beyond his personal situation. I've already prepared all the necessary documentation. If he cooperates, we can resolve this relatively simply. If he doesn't cooperate, we have enough evidence for legal action. David confirmed he was prepared for both possibilities. Emily spent the rest of the day alternating between excitement about having her paternity confirmed and nervousness about confronting Dr. Stevens. Michael watched her emotions, impressed by her ability to process complex situations. Dad, can I ask a question about Mom? Emily asked during dinner. Of course, daughter. Do you think she would be happy if she knew we found each other? The question touched Michael deeply. He had thought about Elizabeth often since finding Emily, imagining how she would react to this miraculous reunion. I'm sure she would be radiant. Her greatest wish was to be a mother, and knowing you grew up to be such a special girl would make her infinitely happy. Michael answered sincerely. Can you tell me more about her? How did you meet? What did she like? Emily showed natural curiosity about her biological mother. Michael spent the evening telling stories about Elizabeth, how they met in college, the plans they made for the future, the dreams they shared about having children. Emily absorbed every detail, building a mental image of the mother she never got to know. Did she have the same birthmark as you on her wrist? Emily asked, touching her own birthmark. Identical. It was a family trait of hers, passed down from grandmother to mother to daughter. Michael smiled. When you were born with the same mark, Elizabeth said it was proof that you would be special. Emily smiled with pride, touching the mark as if it were a tangible connection to her mother. She was right. You really are special. Michael confirmed. That night, Emily slept hugging the photo of Elizabeth that Michael had given her. It was the first time she had a concrete image of her mother, and she had studied every detail of the face with touching intensity. The morning of the meeting with Dr. Stevens arrived filled with tension. Emily woke up earlier than usual, showing anxiety about the upcoming meeting. Are you sure you want to go? Michael offered one last chance for her to reconsider. I am. I need to do this. Emily showed determination, though her nervousness was evident. St. Luke's Hospital hadn't changed much in the 15 years since Emily's birth. Michael felt a wave of painful memories as he walked through the halls where he had received the devastating news about the supposed loss of his family. Dr. Stevens greeted them in his administrative office, a distinguished-looking 58-year-old man with professional manners. His expression visibly changed when David made the introductions and explained the reason for the meeting. Mr. Bennett, this is a very serious allegation. I'm sure there must be some misunderstanding. Dr. Stevens maintained a professional tone, but Michael noticed signs of nervousness. Emily watched Dr. Stevens in silence, studying the man who had been responsible for separating her from her father. Dr. Stevens, we have substantial documentation proving your involvement in a scheme to falsify birth records and separate families. David got straight to the point. That's absurd. My career is impeccable. Dr. Stevens protested, but his tone had lost some of its initial confidence. Emily decided to speak for the first time. Dr. Stevens, I'm Emily. The girl you told my father had not survived. Her voice was calm but filled with emotional impact. Emily's physical presence, alive and well, represented undeniable evidence that Dr. Stevens had lied to Michael 15 years ago. The doctor became visibly disturbed. That case was very complex. There were medical complications. Dr. Stevens tried to find a plausible explanation. Medical complications don't explain why you paid a social worker to ensure Emily disappeared from official records. Michael interrupted, his voice filled with controlled anger. Dr. Stevens realized his options were limited. Jennifer had clearly revealed his involvement, and Emily's presence destroyed any alternative version of events. Look, the situation was complicated. There were external pressures, influential people who wanted to avoid legal complications related to inheritances and family matters. Dr. Stevens finally admitted partial involvement. "Who exerted this pressure?" David asked directly. Dr. Stevens hesitated, clearly weighing the risks of revealing more specific information. "There was a lawyer representing family interests. He offered significant compensation to ensure certain situations were simplified." Emily leaned forward. "Dr. Stevens, how many other families did you separate in this way?" Emily's direct question clearly caught Dr. Stevens off guard. He wasn't prepared to be confronted by one of the very children who had been a victim of his actions. There were only a few cases, very specific situations where there were complex inheritance disputes," Dr. Stevens admitted reluctantly. "Names. We want the names of the other affected families," David pressed. "I can't provide that information without legal guarantees. If I cooperate, I need immunity from prosecution." Dr. Stevens tried to negotiate. Michael watched the doctor who had destroyed his family for money, feeling a mix of anger and contempt. "Dr. Stevens, do you have children?" Michael asked unexpectedly. "Yes, 2 adult children," the doctor replied, not understanding the direction of the question. "Then you can imagine how you would feel if someone lied to you about the supposed loss of your children, leaving you to live 15 years in unnecessary grief." Michael leaned forward. "Can you imagine how you would feel discovering your children grew up without a father, went through multiple families, and ended up living on the streets?" The emotional confrontation had a visible impact on Dr. Stevens. For the first time, he seemed to truly grasp the human toll of his actions. "Mr. Bennett, I deeply regret what happened. At the time, I thought I was just dealing with administrative matters." Dr. Stevens spoke with a less steady voice. "Administrative matters don't justify separating a child from their father," Emily interjected with impressive maturity. "You need to help fix this, not just for us, but for other families who have been harmed." Emily's intervention was eloquent and powerful. Dr. Stevens fell silent for a few moments, clearly wrestling with his decisions. "I will cooperate. I will provide all the information I have about other similar cases." Dr. Stevens finally capitulated. "But I need assurances that my cooperation will be considered during any legal proceedings." David nodded, realizing they had gotten what they needed. "Dr. Stevens, we need specific names, dates, and any documentation that proves these other cases." David took control of the conversation. Over the next 2 hours, Dr. Stevens revealed details about 8 additional cases where he had falsified records or collaborated to separate families for financial reasons. Each revelation was more disturbing than the last. Emily remained present throughout the entire confession, occasionally asking insightful questions that forced Dr. Stevens to be more specific about important details. "Dr. Stevens, are any of these other children still missing?" Emily asked. "I believe so. At least 3 or 4 cases where the children were never reunited with their biological families," Dr. Stevens admitted. The revelation that there were other children still separated from their families motivated Emily even more to seek justice. "Then we can't stop here. We have to help these other children find their families," Emily declared with conviction. Michael watched his daughter with growing pride. She had transformed her own traumatic experience into motivation to help others in similar situations. "Emily is right. We'll use this information to locate other affected families." David confirmed they would expand their investigations. By the end of the meeting, Dr. Stevens had provided detailed information about the scheme and agreed to cooperate fully with any further investigation. He also revealed the name of the attorney who had orchestrated many of the cases, Dr. Edward Morrison. "Does this name mean anything to you?" David asked Michael as they left the hospital. "Not directly, but I can investigate through my business contacts." Michael began mentally planning how to track down Dr. Morrison. Emily remained quiet during the ride back home, processing everything she had heard during Dr. Stevens's confession. "What are you thinking about?" Michael asked gently. "I'm thinking about the other children. They might be going through the same thing I went through." Emily showed genuine concern for people she didn't even know. "Emily, Are you sure you want to get involved in helping these other families? It could be a long and emotionally difficult process. Michael wanted to make sure she understood the commitment she was suggesting. I do, because I know what it's like to be lost and alone. If I can help other children find their families, then all the suffering I went through will have been worth it. Emily responded with absolute determination. Emily's perspective on turning her traumatic experience into positive purpose deeply impressed Michael. She had developed a mature outlook on adversity and overcoming it. Then let's do this together. Father and daughter, helping other families. Michael confirmed his commitment to the mission Emily had proposed. Emily smiled radiantly, realizing she had found not just a father, but also a partner in her determination to seek justice for others. In the following weeks, Michael and Emily worked with David to investigate each case Dr. Stevens had revealed. They managed to locate 2 families where adult children were reunited with parents who believed they had lost them at birth. Emily actively participated in each reunion, offering a unique perspective as someone who had lived through the experience of being a separated child. Her presence and story inspired both the families and the investigators. Emily has become our best advocate, David commented to Michael after a particularly emotional meeting. She has a natural gift for connecting with people in difficult situations, Michael observed, proud of how Emily had channeled her experiences. 1 month after finding Dr. Stevens, they managed to locate Dr. Edward Morrison. The lawyer had retired, but agreed to cooperate when confronted with substantial evidence of his illegal activities. Dr. Morrison revealed he had been hired by wealthy families who wanted to avoid inheritance complications related to illegitimate children or complex family situations. The scheme was more systematic and profitable than anyone had imagined. How many families do you estimate were affected? Emily asked during a meeting with the investigators. Based on the information we have now, probably between 20 and 30 cases over 15 years, David replied somberly. Emily absorbed the magnitude of the problem, showing renewed determination to continue the family reunification work. That means there are at least 15 or 20 children who still don't know who their real families are. Emily quickly calculated. Probably yes. And some of those children are now young adults who never knew they were separated from their biological families, Michael confirmed. The revelation motivated Emily to propose a broader strategy for locating affected families. Dad, can we create a public campaign? Share our story to inspire other families to seek help? Emily suggested enthusiastically. Michael initially hesitated, concerned about the public exposure this would bring for both of them. But Emily's determination to help others convinced him. If you're sure you want to do this, we have the resources to create a truly effective campaign. Michael agreed. Emily nodded energetically. I do. Our story can give hope to other families who believe they've lost children. They developed a public awareness campaign that shared their reunification story, offering free legal resources to families who suspected they had been victims of similar schemes. The response was overwhelming. Hundreds of families contacted them, reporting circumstances similar to what Michael and Emily had experienced. Emily, do you realize you've transformed your personal experience into a movement that's helping hundreds of people? Michael observed during one of their many interviews. Sometimes bad things happen, so we can help other people in ways we never imagined. Emily replied with wisdom that continued to surprise everyone around her. 6 months after their first meeting in the office kitchen, Michael and Emily had reunited 12 additional families and identified several similar corruption networks in other hospitals. Emily had settled completely into her new life, attending a private school where she excelled academically and socially. She maintained regular contact with the Thompson family and frequently visited Dorothy's grave with flowers. Dad, can I ask you a question? Emily asked during a quiet dinner at home. Always. Do you think Mum would be proud of the work we're doing? Emily had developed the habit of including Elizabeth in her reflections about important decisions. I'm absolutely certain she'd be beaming. You've become exactly the kind of person she dreamed our daughter would become, Michael replied with genuine emotion. Emily smiled, instinctively touching the photo of Elizabeth she always carried. Then let's keep going. There are more families out there who need to find each other, Emily declared with renewed determination. Michael watched his daughter, marveling at how deeply she had transformed not only her own life but the lives of dozens of other families. The girl he had found eating leftovers in his kitchen had become a powerful advocate for family justice. "Emily Bennett," he said with pride, "you are the most extraordinary thing that ever happened in my life. And you're the best father a girl could ask for," Emily replied, hugging him warmly. That night, like every night since they found each other, Michael checked that Emily was sleeping peacefully. She always was, hugging the Thompson family doll and the photo of Elizabeth, surrounded by the love and security she had searched for so many years. The transformation of both their lives had been complete. Michael had discovered that true success wasn't measured in billions of dollars, but in the ability to love and be loved. Emily had found not just a father, but a partner in her mission to help other lost children find their families. 2 years after their first meeting, they had helped reunite more than 50 families and inspired legislative changes that made it harder for similar schemes to operate. Emily, now 10 years old, had become a respected speaker on children's rights and family reunification. "Dad, I think we found our purpose," Emily commented during a conference where they had just presented their work. "I think so, daughter. I think so." Michael agreed, looking at the room full of families that had been reunited through their joint work. The story that began with an abandoned girl eating leftover sushi had transformed into a social justice movement that changed hundreds of lives. Emily had proven that sometimes the most unlikely encounters can lead to the most extraordinary purposes. During subsequent years, Michael significantly reduced his involvement in business to focus on parenting and family reunification work. Emily grew up in an environment of love and purpose, developing into a young leader who combined exceptional intelligence with deep compassion. She often visited the building where she used to watch Michael, now transformed into a resource center for separated families. "This place represented hope for me when I was lost," she explained to visitors. "Now it represents hope for other families who are searching for each other." The office where they first met was preserved exactly as it was that night, serving as a reminder that miracles can happen in the most unexpected moments. The kitchen, especially, held a special place in their hearts. "This is where our life truly began," Michael always said when they showed the place to journalists and others interested in their story. Emily graduated high school as class valedictorian, using her personal experience to inspire other young people to turn adversity into opportunities to help others. She was accepted to the country's top universities, choosing to study law with a specialization in children's rights. "I want to become the kind of lawyer who protects families, not one who separates them," she declared when choosing her career. During her college graduation, Emily gave a speech that moved the entire audience. 15 years ago, I was a lost girl eating scraps of food on a kitchen floor. Today, I am a lawyer, dedicated to ensuring that no child has to go through the experience of growing up without knowing who their true family is. This transformation was only possible because a father decided to open his heart to an abandoned child, and because we both decided to turn our pain into purpose. Michael in the audience could barely control his tears of pride as he watched the extraordinary young woman Emily had become. Years later, when Emily opened her own law firm specializing in family reunification, Michael reflected on how his life had completely changed since that night he found an unknown girl in his kitchen. "You saved my life that night," he told Emily during the opening of her office. "We saved each other," Emily corrected wisely, "and now we save other families. That's how love works. It multiplies." Emily's firm quickly became the most respected in the country in family reunification matters. She developed innovative protocols to locate separated families and created psychological support programs for children and parents who were reuniting after years of separation. "Every reunited family is a victory against systems that tried to separate them," Emily explained in her interviews. "Our story proves that family love is stronger than any scheme designed to destroy it." During a special ceremony at St. Luke's Hospital, now fully renovated with new ethical protocols, Emily and Michael inaugurated a wing dedicated to family well-being and transparency in birth records. This wing ensures that no family experiences what we experienced, Emily said during the ceremony. Transparency and medical honesty are fundamental rights of all families. Dr. Stevens, who had collaborated extensively in the investigations and reforms, was present at the ceremony. Miss Emily, your forgiveness and determination to turn tragedy into justice have inspired changes that will benefit future generations, he said during his speech. Emily responded with characteristic grace. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting the past. It means transforming it into something that protects the future. On her 30th birthday, Emily had become a respected national figure, known both for her legal achievements and her personal story of overcoming adversity. Michael, now a 57-year-old man, watched with endless admiration the extraordinary woman his daughter had become. Emily, when you were little and watched me work through that window, did you already know that one day you would transform the world? Michael asked during a walk in the park where they used to stroll when she was a child. I didn't know I would transform the world, but I always knew I would find you and that together we would do something important, Emily replied, still carrying the intuitive wisdom that had characterized her since childhood. The foundation they created had reunified more than 500 families and inspired legislative changes across the country. Emily had received numerous awards for her work in children's rights and family justice. During an international lecture on family reunification, Emily shared the philosophy that had guided her entire life. Family isn't just about genetics or legal documents. Family is about people who choose to stay together, who turn love into action, and who use their own experiences to protect other people. My father and I have proven that sometimes families find each other under the most impossible circumstances, and that when they do, they can change the world. Michael, at the international hearing, felt the same overwhelming pride he had felt since the first day Emily called him Daddy. After the lecture, as they walked through the streets of Geneva where the conference had taken place, Emily commented, Dad, sometimes I think about how different our lives would be if I had never walked into your kitchen that night. It would be a much poorer life, Michael immediately replied. You taught me that true wealth is having someone to love and a purpose worth fighting for. And you taught me that family is something we build through daily choices, not something that just happens to us, Emily answered. That evening, in their hotel, Emily called the Thompson family as she did every week. They had become an essential part of her extended family, participating in all the important celebrations of her life. Uncle James, Aunt Susan, I want to tell you about today's conference. Emily always began her calls in the same affectionate way. The connection maintained with all the people who had been important during her journey demonstrated the deep gratitude and capacity for love that characterized Emily. During her weekly call to the cemetery where Dorothy was buried, she had arranged for fresh flowers to be placed weekly. Emily shared her achievements with the woman who had been her first adoptive mother. Mrs. Dorothy, today I spoke to 500 people about the importance of protecting children. I know you would be proud. Emily always ended her messages the same way. Michael watched these rituals of gratitude and connection with continuous admiration. Emily had transformed every meaningful relationship in her life into a source of strength and motivation for her work. At 35, Emily married David Jr., the son of her first lawyer, who had grown up admiring her work and eventually chose the same legal field. The ceremony was held in the memorial garden they had created on the rooftop of the building where they first met. This place represents new beginnings, Emily explained her choice of venue. It's fitting that we start our family here. Michael walked Emily down the aisle, feeling indescribable emotion seeing his daughter begin her own family journey. Dad, thank you for teaching me that true love is patient, steadfast, and transformative, Emily whispered before the ceremony began. Thank you for teaching me that miracles happen when we least expect them, and that family is the greatest gift life can offer, Michael replied, kissing his daughter's forehead. 2 years later, Emily gave birth to a girl named Elizabeth Dorothy Bennett in honor of the two most important women in her life. Michael held his granddaughter for the first time in the same hospital where Emily had been born, now completely renovated and operating under strict ethical protocols. Elizabeth, he whispered to the baby, your grandmother and great-grandmother would be so proud to see our family continuing to grow with love. Emily watched her father with her daughter, seeing the circle of love complete itself in a beautiful way. "Dad, our story proves that sometimes we lose people we love. But if we keep our hearts open, love always finds a way back," Emily reflected as she watched Michael rock their granddaughter. Little Elizabeth grew up hearing stories about how her mother and grandfather found each other, about the importance of protecting families, and about turning hardships into opportunities to help others. When Elizabeth turned 8, the same age Emily was when she met Michael, she began accompanying her mother to some of the family reunification meetings. "Mommy, why do you help so many families?" Elizabeth asked after a particularly emotional meeting. "Because one day I was lost and someone helped me find my family. Now it's my turn to help other people find theirs," Emily explained simply. "And when I grow up, will I help too?" Elizabeth showed interest in continuing the family tradition. "If you want to, yes, but the most important thing is that you be kind, brave, and always remember that family is the most precious gift we can have," Emily replied. Michael, observing the conversation between mother and daughter, realized that the values Emily had learned through adversity were being passed down to the next generation through love and stability. During Emily's 50th birthday, her law firm had expanded internationally, inspiring family reunification programs in several countries. She had written 3 books about her work and her personal story, all bestsellers that inspired thousands of families around the world. "Emily, when you look back at everything we've accomplished, what's the most important lesson you've learned?" a journalist asked during a special birthday interview. "I learned that no matter how lost we are, there's always hope of finding our way home. And I learned that home isn't a place, it's the people we choose to love and who choose to love us back," Emily replied. Michael, now 72, still worked actively at the foundation they had created together. His energy was completely directed toward family reunification work and his growing family. "Dad, do you ever regret dedicating so much of your life to this work?" Emily asked during a family lunch. "Never. This work gave meaning to every day of my life, and doing it with you made every victory that much more special," Michael replied without hesitation. Emily smiled, hugging the father who had completely transformed her life and allowed her to transform the lives of so many others. The Bennett Foundation had become the world's largest family reunification organization, with offices in 15 countries and partnerships with international human rights organizations. "Our story began with a girl eating leftover food, but it turned into a movement that changed thousands of lives," Emily reflected during the Foundation's 25th anniversary ceremony. During her speech, she looked at Michael in the audience, seeing the same man who had chosen to open his heart to an unknown child, now surrounded by his granddaughter and great-grandchildren who carried the legacy of love and service they had built together. "Family is something we build through conscious choices and constant love. It's something we protect through action and sacrifice, and it's something we multiply when we use our own story to help other people find their stories," Emily concluded. At the end of her speech, Emily made an observation that perfectly summarized the extraordinary journey that had begun that night in a corporate kitchen. "If you're lost, don't give up searching for your family. If you found your family, don't forget to help other people find theirs. Love always finds a way, even when it seems impossible." The audience rose in a prolonged ovation, recognizing not just Emily's words, but the entire lifetime of service and love she represented. Michael approached Emily after the ceremony, hugging her with the same tenderness he had shown that first night when she was an 8-year-old girl eating alone on his kitchen floor. "Emily Bennett, you transformed my life in ways I could never have imagined," he said emotionally. "Michael Harrison Bennett, you taught me that miracles happen when we open our hearts to the impossible," Emily replied, using his full name as she did in more formal moments. That evening, as on so many others, they dined together, now a family of 4 generations, sharing stories, making plans and celebrating the love that had grown from an unlikely encounter in a corporate kitchen. Little Elizabeth, now 15, and already showing interest in following her mother's footsteps in family rights law, asked a question that surprised everyone. "Grandpa Michael, do you think there are other children like Mom was, watching people through windows, waiting to find their families?" Michael looked at Emily, seeing on his daughter's face the same determination that had characterized her since childhood. "Probably yes, Elizabeth, and perhaps it is our mission to keep searching for them," Michael answered. Emily nodded, realizing her work was far from over. "Then that's what we'll do. We'll keep looking for lost children and helping them find their families." The family conversation turned into a planning session, as often happened when they gathered. Each family member contributed ideas on how to expand their reach and help even more families. "Our story proves that family is stronger than any force that tries to separate it," Emily observed. "And our work proves that when we find our own family, we have a responsibility to help others find theirs." Michael watched his family, Emily, David Jr., Elizabeth, and the two younger great-grandchildren, and felt overwhelming gratitude for the extraordinary journey that had begun with a simple decision not to send an unknown child away. Emily was right from day one, he thought. Sometimes the most important people in our lives come to us in the most unexpected ways, and when they do, they transform not only our lives, but all the lives we can touch through the love we share. The story of Michael and Emily had become much more than a family reunion. It had become a testament to the transformative power of unconditional love, the determination to seek justice, and the importance of using our own experiences to protect and help others. That night, as every night for the past 40 years, Michael silently gave thanks for having made the decision to open his heart to an unknown girl who appeared in his kitchen eating leftover food. And Emily, as she always did before sleeping, gently touched the photo of Elizabeth she still kept and whispered, "Mum, I hope you're proud of the family we've built and the lives we've managed to change." The story that had begun with abandonment and separation had transformed into a legacy of love, justice, and reunification that would continue to inspire families for generations. End of story. Now tell me what you thought of this touching story of family reunion. Did Michael make the right decision in welcoming Emily? The transformation she caused in his life and so many other families shows how an act of compassion can change the world. Leave your reflections on this journey of love and overcoming in the comments. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other heartwarming stories.